Hello, Success Family, LinkedIn family, customers and viewers of the Customer Success Festival. Welcome to this session where I will be talking about an all-time favorite topic, which is the alignment between sales and customer success. But before that, I'm Subhash Srinivasan, and I take care of global delivery, customer success, services, support for Rakuten Symphony, and I'm based out of the San Jose, and it's my pleasure to be part of this show. And so the topic is really intriguing, right? I mean, we all want to be in a world where CS and sales are absolute friends, right? But does it exist? It doesn't. If we take a very honest look at the way our organizations are set up and how it goes, it is not set it up. We do not live in an ideal setup, right? In this session, I will take a look at a framework consisting of 5 different tenets that should all come together if we want to establish true alignment between sales and sales, and to have them to believe that, not just believe, right? Not just believe, but to really have them to work together with the absolute conviction that working together without mutually excluding each other is the ideal path forward for growth for that particular company. So without much ado, let me jump on to my presentation. I hope you're all able to see my screen, and here we go, right? So I just don't think the alignment between sales and customer success should be set at a 50,000 feet level, right? Where it's just a boardroom talk, where it's just a meeting room talk, or it's just a vision statement. That should not how it be. It should be something that blends into the overall process and ways of working, and with very serious measurable outcomes, right? So that it can really become part of the culture that is ingrained between CS and customer success. Otherwise, it just remains a statement. It never cascades down into the team, and it never gets implemented. But are CS and sales really friends? I mean, I just want to throw this question to all of you that are here, which are, listening to me. Are CS and CS really friends? In an ideal world, if we talk about sales, hunts for new customers, they involve customer success towards the finalization of the sales process, always keeping customer success involved, and they provide a handoff to CS and transition ownership at just the right time. And then they take a backseat. And then customer success takes over. It takes over from sales. They have a very beautiful handoff checklist in which they know exactly what they have to deliver. They have understood all the promises that have been made by the sales to the customer in order to meet what the customer expects out of this engagement. And then they collaborate with sales for all expansions and upsells. Like it is like, a beautiful marriage, which, it just exists. It's all rosy, etc. But honestly, I just don't know how many companies can actually claim this today, right? It could be maybe 1%, 5%, 10%, but where we want to be is actually 10%. Is not 10%, but actually 100%. Now, why do we say this, right? A growth can come for a company earlier only from sales, right? But now that is gone. Those days have gone. Now, CS is equally responsible for growth. In fact, CS is more responsible for growth because in the era that we live in, any growth for a company comes from its existing customers. Even the ability to acquire new customers comes from the testimonials, the feedback, the positive inputs, and the growth that is demonstrated by your current customers. So customer success is extremely important. Having said that, if it is as simple and as black and white as this, why don't they understand? Why don't they work together, right? It is because there is really no conscious intention or parameters that have been set by organizations to actually track sales and CS for this, right? It is not possible without actually demonstrating and tracking through a standard framework that actually enables this collaboration. And I have personally seen that where companies collaborate like this, where sales and CS work together and they have a very clear handover, the growth that they are seeing is actually exponential. I'm not kidding, right? The growth that they are seeing is actually exponential in the sense that it is easily 10 times more than the companies that fail to do this. So, how do we do this instead of just keeping it at a high level statement? Now, I have come up with what is called as the COHUG framework of alignment, right? Because it is easy to understand when you put something as a framework and clearly talk about the principles. And I implement this in my organization wherever I go. I take this framework with me because I am a firm believer that for an organization to grow, sales and CS alignment is inevitable, right? So, what is this COHUG framework, right? It's like the Maslow's rising pyramid. I will go bottom up, right? The topmost being of the topmost order of priority, and the bottom one being an essential element, right? So, the first aspect of this pyramid is governance, in the sense that you need to have proper governance, reviews, important metrics, and stakeholder management, and a process for actually reviewing the growth that a company is seeing, the misses that the company has made because of certain lack of process. All this has to be measured in a proper governance. And the governance is not just about reviews, it is also about who brings what to the table, right? Who reports to who. It is also the organization structure. It is about the cadence. It is about the metrics. It is about who does what, who presents what, who chases what. All of that coming together and being reviewed on a periodic basis, right? So the governance model that facilitates collaboration between sales and customer success is a very, very critical component. Now, the second component is this is the absolute most next best element for ensuring that sales and CS are aligned, which is for them to have a unified customer canvas. The unified customer canvas is a very popular framework. It's a business model framework. We didn't implement this. But what this captures is that a very unified vision of a particular customer and why they are doing business with us. It is critical, right? It helps to capture the customer stakeholders that we operate with, the customer pain points, and what would they gain from if you were to solve the pain point that they are undergoing. And in effect, it also translates into which products can solve these pains, what value the product can deliver, and why are they doing business with you, which products are of importance to them, right? This unified vision of a customer is very important between sales and CS, so that there is no scope creep, so that there is alignment as to why we are doing business, and so that customer success can pull the rest of the organization to come in and deliver on a very unified vision. If every group in an organization has its own view of why we are doing business with a customer, then they are bound to fail. So the next element is to have a unified vision. Now, the third and the most important, now I know I'm calling everything as most important, but in the order, right? The next one is to have a handoff. How many organizations, how many projects really start off with a handoff checklist? It is not a formality. It is not just, a set of elements which you go tick and then say, okay, I've done the handoff, now go run with it. No, that is not how it is done. A handoff is a transfer of information and responsibility from sales, which is purely revenue led and which is responsible for selling a product, into actually walking the talk, right? If you do not know what has happened during the initial phases, it is very likely that the rest of it will fail. So to do a handoff is extremely important. Now, the fourth one, outcomes. Now, whenever there is an overlap, there is bound to be a friction, right? And in our organization and in our practice, it is our learning that it is best to keep very minimal overlaps in ownership, right? The ownerships have to be segregated. Who is responsible for what? Do we have very clear ownerships and very clear outcomes, right? If there is overlap, if two people from two different functions are responsible for delivering the same thing to a customer, there is supposed to be and there will be a lot of friction. And when there is friction, there will always be a lack of a cohesive effort towards the ultimate goal, which is to grow the company, right? The last one, I know it is a very itchy topic and we all don't want to talk so much about it. comp. Why are we talking money? Of course, it is important, right? Why it is very important is because, whenever somebody else is getting your share of your reward, right, it causes bitterness, it causes animosity, and it makes you move away and away and away from being able to be part of the collective goal, right? So people do work for compensation, and so between sales and CS, it is best to define a compensation structure that is non-overlapping, and also it is important to have a comp structure that is slightly different. It cannot be an apple to apple comparison, it has to be apples and oranges, but there is a trick to doing it, and there is a way to make sure that both of them feel rewarded, right? With that, let me go one by one, and I will start with the topmost order, right? Let's just get on to the topmost, which is the comp. Now, compensation is a fundamental right, right? There is no point in someone feeling that they are taking your money, right? It just motivates. So when setting compensation goals and compensation KPIs and compensation monetary rewards, just do this. Sales is only for new customer wins. The rewards are only for new revenue. Let that be clear. The bulk of a sales quota, the compensation and rewards is going to come from new money, whereas customer success is for execution. And if they are able to bring growth out of that execution, then that is for to be compensated, right? It is when they are able to retain, grow revenue from the base the sales has set up for them. Correct? So the customer success rewards are for execution, and the CS is not rewarded just on money. They are not rewarded just on revenue. There are so many other parameters that they should be rewarded on. So the way to go about this is to have a very, very clear setting the stage for why are they being compensated. CS, you're being compensated for good execution, for taking care of the customer well, for retaining the customer, satisfying the customer, for growing from the existing base. So disparities will kill motivation, right? And in some cases, should there be an overlap, organizations should be willing to trade off money, because when you're ready to trade off those small time bonuses or perks and just give to both, that kills any animosity, and it actually brings them together, aligns them together to work for a goal, because they know that when they are in it together, they will win, and both of them are getting compensated. Now, here is a compensation model that we generally follow, right? A framework. Now, sales, what we do, what we recommend we do is that always reward sales as a quota or a percentage of the revenue that they bring in. It is always a percentage, it's always commission based, even in the technology company. And sales is compensated on a very high quota one time during the beginning of the deal, and that's it, right? They do take a huge commission, and that is how sales has always been motivated to work. And in terms of expansions or upsells from the same base which they have already established and handed off to CS, it doesn't work as a commission base. It works as certain percentage of quota. It is not even a quota, right? They don't have quotas on expansions. The quotas on expansions should not be a sales incentive at all. But should an expansion happen, the compensation that a sales gets should be as a percentage split between CS and sales, and not really a huge commission or a percentage that is coming out of the first time signing up of the revenue like it traditionally happens. So sales must be set to be motivated and to go after big deals, big revenues, new money, and a good share of that percentage or the commission should go to them, right? And after that, the expansions and cross sells and upsells should be an outcome of CS. Now, talking about CS, right? The CS doesn't get commissions, right? At least we haven't structured in a way where CS gets commissions. In the way that we have set it up, CS gets an annual bonus or a compensation component. That's it. There is no percentage or proportion based on every deal, right? There is a certain target that is set for CS in terms of expansions, net revenue retention, gross retention, net dollar retention, which I already talked about, CSAT, etc. Right? There is an annual bonus, and of course, if they beat it, of course, there is a higher rate that is involved, but they are compensated annually. The reason we do this is because we just do not want CS to be hunting for compensation all the time, right? It is kept as a one-time thing. You do your work, and they do get credits for, see good CSATs. They do get for SLAs and KPIs, meeting service delivery parameters, and for meeting NPS. And it is a one-time variable component payout, which is a fixed sum. And if there are multipliers, of course, if they do beat the numbers, there are multipliers just like sales have, but they are not compensated on a commission basis. So CS is always looking for next year renewal, next year, or any upsells or cross sells that can happen because you have delivered extraordinary value, good NPS. So, and like I said, CS compensation is not just about money, it is about execution, it is about customer delight. If you can get one customer advocacy, a 5-star rating, which in turn generates CSQLs for you, then you're doing a good job. These are indicators, these are your primary health indicators, right? So why do we do this? Because why do we? So we kind of tilt, a huge part of the rewards once a customer is signed and every growth that comes out of it towards CS. And, we continue to do that variable component because if, let's say, the CS has not done a good job, they have not delivered on time, they have not set the right expectations internally with the product, and they have not delivered customer satisfaction, etc., to the customer, then you can pretty much wash your hands of any growth that is possible. Even sales, any recommendations from CSQLs, referrals, testimonials, you can just kiss it goodbye, right? So this is exactly why we kind of tilt the focus on compensation after a deal is signed towards CS, while still giving sales, some part, a very small part of the rewards, because they brought the deal, they still hold the relationship, right? So that is how we manage. So now let's move on to the next part of it, right? Which is ownership and outcomes. Now, the path to success needs to be separated out while end goals remain the same. Like I have been talking a couple of times about it. CS should focus on execution. Sales should focus on bringing new money, new customers, new logos, existing customer, existing growth, existing satisfaction, right? So what we have found is that it is possible to motivate both of them to work in tandem with each other without looking at each other as enemies by setting complementary goals. For example, let's talk about one area where there is overlap, right? CS brings qualified leads. Now, CS should lead and always generate CSQLs, and those CSQLs should qualify to convert. Given an opportunity, anybody can give any number of leads. That doesn't count, right? The success metric for CS is the ability to bring qualified leads. And the job of the sales is therefore to catch that lead and convert it into a real opportunity. Now, CS is, so it is therefore the goal of the CS is to bring qualified CSQLs. At least in our organization, we have a SLA or a metric or a KPI, whatever, OKR, whatever you call it for CS, that 20% of the leads generated overall for sales should come from CS, from customer success, or from existing customers, or their referrals, or their testimonials, and 80% of it should be qualified and it should convert. I mean, I can understand with marketing, right? You're just throwing in the dark. But when CS brings a lead, it better be qualified, right? So that is the metric that has been set up for CS, whereas sales carries the usual metric of converting a qualified pipeline into an actual opportunity. And so generally, when setting goals and when setting OKRs, we suggest that you keep sales out of any CRM metric and you keep CS out of any revenue metric. It helps. It so helps each of them to look after and focus on what they were meant to be and to not to have overlaps, right? So let me walk you through some of the ownerships and outcomes that we have set. So the CS goals, or how they are measured and what they should focus on as a metric, right? Tangible outcomes. Nick Mehta, in his blogs, if you observe, of Gainsight, he always says verified outcomes, right? Verified outcomes means you did a good job. Show it to me in numbers. Show it to me in data, right? That is when we know that you've taken ownership, you've delivered on the numbers, and you put the focus on where your eyes need to be. So the CS goals, what we do, gross revenue retention, which is to be able to retain 90% of the customers should not churn, right? It is a high metric, but that is because in the area that I'm in, which is telco, customers do not usually churn. It's not so easy. But in SaaS, um, the gross revenue retention could be somewhat lower, which is about 80%, right? And then churn. Churn is an important CS metric. Net revenue retention, it has to be of the order of 125 plus, right? When we talk about net revenue retention, we are talking about all the revenue that you have put together from existing customers, including any leak and churns that you have, right? It cannot be below 100%. It has to be at the order of 125% and above. Expansion bookings. It is the job of CS to bring in expansion bookings, which is to grow an existing base that is already signed up, right? We are not talking about cross sells. We are talking about upsells, which is an absolute CS job. Now, adoption. Is the customer actually adopting the product for which they signed up for? Because most of our contracts are designed in such a manner, the customer will sign the contract, the sales will book the revenue, but the actual rollout doesn't happen, right? It is either slow or the customer continues to postpone year after year and there is just no deployment, right? So this is where, CS is responsible for adoption or finding out why an adoption is not happening and for steering the customer towards an alternate path. The customer health score, I don't have to say that. Net promoter score. How many of your, how many sponsors and stakeholders are you able to bring to the table so that they are able to, give you or promote your product in their own company, their own groups, peer groups, and across the industry. The advocacy and references, alluding to what I just spoke. Now, this is the next one is a very interesting thing, right? Usually we say CS is not responsible for numbers, right? But what we are seeing moving on more and more is that the P&L responsibilities of the product, or what you call as the general management, is actually becoming a CS outcome, right? I'm not talking about the product or the entire global P&L. That is also in some way, right? The responsibilities of a customer P&L, if you're slicing and dicing it based on, individual project specific P&L, it is coming down to the CS, because once you fix the license cost and once you have fixed that's a given, right? That goes into capex. Now, all the rolling costs in terms of services, support, maintenance, ticketing, etc., is now a responsibility of the customer success. And it is the CS responsibility to run the show on a tight margin, right? Especially in these times of downturn, we've seen that CS is under tremendous pressure to go digital and also to, optimize the margins in which they operate. They are answering the CFO who drives the P&L, right? So that is another thing. Customer satisfaction, right? The CSAT scores better be top notch. And if that is not done, it is a reflection of CS. I know that there is a school of thought that says CS is everyone's responsibility. I don't agree, right? It is the job of CS to go set the expectation with the rest of the organization so that they will all come together. That ownership is with CS. You cannot say it is with everybody. Something which is everybody's responsibility is nobody's responsibility, right? So now let's talk about sales goals. Very simple. You're talking about new growth, new revenue targets, and you're responsible for bringing customers that will give you good net and gross margins, customer lifetime value, pipeline and conversion rate, right? The customer lifetime value is a very important metric, right? The customer lifetime value better grow, which is an indication that the customer is there to, do business with you. Then the pipeline and conversion rates, right? Now let's talk about which are some metrics that are areas of collaboration. Margins, yes, the sales and the customer success might roll up to a CRO who could be reporting into a CFO. And there, if you ask them to collaborate, right, when working together and signing up a deal, sign up with the right set of margins, agree on customer lifetime value, focus on conversions and work together on delivering all of this. It will work out beautifully, right? They should in fact collaborate. Some of these metrics, they can collaborate, but there is one person that is responsible for delivering these metrics. Now, if you talk about where there can be friction, if you say sales is also, if you say CS is responsible for CSAT, and if sales tries to take an upper hand and say, I brought this account, you're not delivering well. I brought this account, you didn't take care, and so it's churning. Or if CS tells sales, you brought in a customer with absolutely no lifetime value and they're not growing, right? So any kind of, if you make two people responsible for any of this, it is bound to have problem. But two people can be responsible for what I have put in the left hand side: margins, customer lifetime value, conversions, right? Whereas the friction can happen when, when they are taking ownership for both, right? So now let's talk about the third thing, right? The handoff process and checklist. If you want an engagement to fail, don't do handoff. Just sign a contract, pass it on to CSM and say, go ahead, right? You are responsible for the successful engagement of this. It will fail. Now, CS, ideally, right? If you want the customer to be taken care of well, CS should be involved before the contract is signed. And the CS should be apprised of what has been promised to the customer, in what timeline, and why, right? And CS should be able to narrate this. A good handoff process, if well done, eliminates the need for sales to be present in any meeting outside of the first kickoff meeting, right? And a handoff checklist should handle or capture the sales promises, the milestones which have been committed, and critical customer deliverables. And these milestones have to come from CS and go into the contract. CS is an active participant of the contract, and the buy-in from CS is an absolute essential element. And in a good official project kickoff meeting, if you have done well, a CSM will be able to articulate the entire customer journey, the product, the milestones, the timelines, the values to deliver, etc., unanimously without interference from anyone else, right? A CS will be able to articulate this to product management and say, this is what we need to define in the roadmap. These are the milestones that we have, and will eliminate the need for sales. And that is the ideal world, because sales should not be sitting in a meeting after handoff, which is a poor reflection of trust, right? And it's a very wrong signal to send to the customer. A sales sitting in CS meetings indicates that either there is a problem going on in between these groups, which is a big red flag for the customer, right? That is why CS needs to be involved from a mature stage of the contract, give contract inputs, get introduced to the customers at the right time, and build that trust before signing the contract and not after. Now, what are the key elements of a handoff checklist, right? I'll just let you all digest this for a minute. Because I'll just not go over each and every line, but I'll just try to touch base on this at a broad level, right? The first and foremost is on this is the customer information. What is the size of the company? Which industry? How do they make money? What is their use case? What pricing they are on? And how many people are going to use it to start? This is very important, right? If you're not set up for scale and you're bringing in a customer that has 1 million customers on day one, you're finished, right? So it is important, and it is important to say, I will not do business because I will fail. So what was the customer's general sentiment during the exploration and buying process? Second, what was the proposed solution? What are the pain points? What other solutions were considered, and why did they choose this particular solution? And what did they hesitate during the process? Were there hesitations? Were there gaps, white spaces that we had to fill? If yes, what are those white spaces? And what is excitement to them, right? If we want a happy customer, what should we do? What would excite them? The contract details. Of course, needless to say, I mean, who is the customer, stakeholder, sponsor, who is the deciding authority, and what was the point of contact, who will be the point of contact moving forward, and transition point and accomplishments. Goals, right? I'll come to that more in the next thing. But what do we as a company want to collectively achieve for this customer, and what are the risks involved? And if we were to typically fail in this agreement, what would that failure look like? And what can we do to avoid this failure? And has the customer promised any expansions, or what are the opportunities that we have in mind? Do we see a long term customer lifetime value? What is their expectations, etc.? Right. The next one is the deployment timelines and milestones. Where are we deploying? What is the rollout? What is the makeup of the team? Who's observing it? Are they going to support, or we are going to support? What is our level of involvement? How much do we train? What is their deployment size? And how will this integrate with any existing workflows? Do we need to integrate? Is it a turnkey solution, customizable solution, etc., etc.? Then the transition timelines, right? If between sales and CS, when is the transition timeline planned? What criteria have been met for CS to take over? Enough knowledge sharing, a team formation, the product readiness, deployment ready. What level of solutioning are we in? Does CS need to do more solutioning, etc., etc.? And then when are reviews and acceptance for total handoff schedule? So this is just a broad checklist, right? Now, once you can customize it according to your company needs and industry needs, but it is very important that you have a pretty exhaustive checklist categorized by various parameters. Add to these questions and have the answers captured. There is no more. This is like a very important. It's as important as the customer's contractual document, right? Now, this has to be reviewed not just by CS, sales, and product, but some higher level authority or even a quality person, which makes sure that the answers are qualitative, right? Not quantitative. You don't need big answers, right? Somebody needs to review that the answers are qualitative, observable. And if both the teams that drafted this were not to be present and a new team was to take over, still it has every relevant information that is present here. And this needs, once this checklist is available, it is very important for CS to observe this, put together some kind of a project plan or a customer lifetime plan or customer timeline plan, and present it to every single person in the company. Now, the next one, right, is to have what we said is a unified customer view, a unified customer canvas. And why is this important, right? In fact, of all the things, one thing that is applicable for the entire company and not just CS and sales is the unified customer canvas, because it helps to answer some very, very important questions, not just for CS, right? It doesn't talk about contract. It doesn't talk about timeline. It talks about something much bigger, right? Why are we even engaging this customer? Can we do justice? If we are all in, then we are all in. Marketing, product, customer success, and sales, and the executive sponsorship, everything needs to be in place. Now, I'll tell you this, right? If you sign up for a customer for which the organization is not aligned, it's not just sales, right? If the organization in itself is not aligned, then within a year or two, their key sponsors or the C suite will stop their sponsorship for this project. Then everyone involved in the project will want to get out of the project. The customer will not be satisfied. So you're looking at an unnecessary churn, right? Where all the resources could be conserved and used in some other project or for some other customer. So it is very important for CS to generate this unified customer vision based on inputs from sales, based on their own market research, present it back to sales, customer success, etc. So that everybody has a very unified view of why we are doing business with this customer. And one very strong template that I personally recommend is to do this value proposition template. So you start with the right-hand side where you create a customer profile, where you talk about the key customer stakeholder, who is actually the person that is going to decide the future of your company, right? The future growth of your company with them. The key stakeholder who is responsible for adopting and deploying the solution. And it defines the avatar, right? Is he a marketing person? Is he a technology director? Is he a financial officer? Is he a customer success person? Who is he? And what are his wants and what are his pains? So he is currently pained by the fact that, let's say, a marketing head of marketing or marketing director, he wants to change his social media strategy from a very formal business strategy to a very B2C kind of a approach. But the company has not done that in the past. That is a pain point. His competition is killing him in TikTok. What does he do? Who does he go to? He wants an influencer. He wants some funny influencers that can still get him to penetrate into TikTok without losing the seriousness of the business, right? That is an example. Now, let's say you're the marketing media company. You have a set of influencers. You know how to crack the TikTok algorithm. You know the timing. You know the competition in that space. You know what customers are talking about. You know the chatter. You sense the chatter. So that is where your solution comes into the picture, right? You have a marketing package and you have some pain relievers, which are like, which are like, you have terrible, you have incredible success in this B2C marketing or B2B marketing using social media, dark social marketing tapping. And you have some proven success where you have shown and demonstrated that you have delivered massive revenue and outcomes for some competition, and that framework is proven to win. And with that, you're able to, with that experience, you're able to deliver an extraordinary value of growing your existing customer base, right? This is the value that you're able to do. So this particular statement, I'm working with this person to solve this problem, to deliver this value through this product, to deliver this gain, and to help them do this. It could be just a single line statement, but this needs to exist for every single customer. And the sales and CS needs to align on this point. They have to be locked at the hip at this point, and they should present it to the rest of the company so that the product understands, product is able to deliver the features that customers are looking for, and a sponsorship exists. If this does not exist, if this canvas does not exist, then, and if sales and CS are not aligned on this, then there will be different messages going into the company. Then finally, right, a well-defined governance model. Now, I'm not talking just about, doing a quarterly business reviews and tracking the metrics. Do you talk about CSQLs? What are the CSAT scores? What is the state of services, the new opportunities? Of course, these are extremely good metrics. They should be reviewed depending on whatever cadence that you fix, right? The MBR or the QBR, whatever. But I'm talking about who does it, right? That stakeholder cadence, who does the MBR, QBR is an extremely important, and it has to be a joint. It has to be a joint opportunity for sales and CS to come together and show how unified and how well they are working together in front of the customer. So to be able to do this, right, to be able to have good governance, where sales and CS are not meeting once in a while only during MBRs or QBRs or during new opportunities, but to be actual friends, it is very important to define a perfect organization structure. I'm telling you, the way you've structured an organization, who reports into who, is part of governance, right? It is not just the meetings, it's not just QBR. Now, define an org structure that fosters this collaboration and governance, where sales and CS are able to talk effortlessly, right? If we are doing a proof of concept, do they talk internally between them and try to manage the customer? Are they trying to control scope? Are they not spending too much money before a customer really becomes a customer? So to be able to do all this, and how do you grow? How do you move the marketing engine? How does sales given the necessary account managers so that you can pursue and chase opportunities? So sales and CS is not a one-time thing, right? It is a continuous ongoing process, and it is very, very important to have an organization structure that fosters collaboration. And this org structure depends on the maturity of the organization and the maturity of the customer. It depends on how big you are, and also depends on how big the customer is. For example, some of the questions that you need to answer: are you having dedicated CMs or shared CMs? Is it okay to have shared CMs and really not spoil the experience of the customer? Account managers, are CSMs are the ones that are acting as account managers, or are they separate? Now, CSMs can act as account managers in customers even if they have become fairly large, but if the growth has stopped, right? Or if the customer has been in business for several decades, there's no need for separate account managers. CSM can take the ownership of account managers and brief sales, right? Solution architects. Now, is the customer in an industry where the POCs are not short? You're not completing POCs in 2 weeks. Let's say it's a very intense process of 1 year of POC trial, like what happens in telco or even in cloud, right? The POCs take typically 3 months. In those cases, it is sacrilege to involve pre-sales, right? In this case, the solution architects have to support sales, correct? They have to participate in the POC process because you've not signed the contract. But still, if you see a CLV, if there is alignment between CS and sales, it is fair that solution architects do the POC. Revenue office, right? Does sales report into a revenue officer? Now I'm seeing a trend. Sales guys, if you're on the call, you may not like it. Sales is beginning to report into CS, because I go back into the main point with which I started. In the time and era that we live in, any growth that you aspire will come only from your existing customers, and CS is responsible for that. So CS is a very, very powerful organization. It is shaping up to be a very powerful organization. And traditionally, going by all that we have seen and whatever we have discussed so far, sales is responsible for one-time revenue. So I'm seeing a shift where in a lot of cases, sales is beginning to report into CS, or both CS and sales in parallel report into revenue, right? The financial officer, does the CFO track the CS expenses? Does CS directly report into CFO, or does sales roll up their revenue projections? Who's responsible? How do they collaborate? Whose neck does the CFO catch when discussions about margins come? So who presents what? Who's responsible for what? Who reports into who? This is a very important aspect, as important as how you reward, to have an organization structure. Because if you're not reporting into the right person in a company, the message doesn't pass down, the priorities don't flow down, right? If the person reporting to you does not share the same priority as you, who's at the top, it just stops there. It doesn't flow down. But in a good company which has good culture, the information flows even to the person, the janitor, right? That is how much culturally the organizations behave in one symphony or one harmony, right? So to be able to set that culture, and a culture of alignment, the way you structure your organization and who reports it to who, is very, very, very critical. So with that said, I come to the end of my COHUG framework. I hope you are able to appreciate the 5 tenets that I spoke about, right? Some of them do have overlaps, but if I were to leave you with a thought, these are the 5 beginning steps that you should focus on, and go after setting it as something that you would very vigorously review on a very uh, regular cadence, so that that culture of alignment comes in. Because sales and CS jointly carry just one goal: growth through and from existing customers. That's all you want. And alignment is critical for this to happen. So go chase that alignment and make it happen. Thank you. I hope this session was useful. If you would like to talk to me more about this, hit me on LinkedIn. I'm known. I'll just drop my LinkedIn as part of the notes, and feel free to reach out to me. And thank you so much for your time. See you all soon.